Amy White
has joined the conference.
Tricia Willoughby
Has joined the conference.
Mark Johnson
Has joined the conference.
Becky Taylor
Has joined the conference.
Let me know when we're live.
Eric Hall
Has joined the conference.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this conference call, July 5th, 2018 meeting of the North Carolina State Board of Education. I'm Bill Kobe, Chairman of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. I now ask Dr. Townsend Smith to call the roll to determine if we have a quorum of the board participating. I note to all listening that a quorum is 7 of the voting members.
Chairman Kobe,
Here.
Vice Chair Davis,
here. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor
Alan
Morris,
Duncan.
Has joined the conference.
Lieutenant Governor, State Treasurer Falwell, Mr. Alcorn, Mr. Chastain, Ms. White,
present.
Mr. Duncan,
Here.
Mr. McDevitt,
Here.
Ms. Willoughby,
Here.
Mr. Keenan, Ms. Taylor,
Here.
Dr. Oxendine,
Present.
we have a quorum, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in the discussion on the matter and voting on the matter. Board members, you have seen the agenda for this July 5th, 2018 meeting and had an opportunity to review it. I ask if there are any requests for changes to the agenda. If not, I request a motion for approval. And please state your name.
Willoughby move approval.
Ms. Willoughby moves, second by
Taylor, second.
Ms. Taylor, seconds. All those in favor of approving, well, the agenda, listen for the roll call.
Chairman Kobe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Okay, the motion stands approved. I'll now ask for a motion to approve the June 2018.
Reggie Keenan.
Has joined the conference.
Approve the June 2018 meeting minutes, which is several meetings. So, but we'll seek to approve all of them at the same time. So, please, I need a motion from someone to approve the minutes of those meetings.
Amy White, move approval.
Okay, Ms. White moves approval. Is there a second?
Olivia Oxendine offers a second.
Okay, Dr. Oxendine offers a second. Now I ask Dr. Townsend Smith to call the roll.
Chairman Kobe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Okay, the minutes stand approved.
Mr. Chair, can I ask just a quick question, logistical, for future reference? The minutes, how are they vetted through? I know we've had some changes recently, and maybe this is a Deanna question, but I just want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence on reading those, and just want to ask how are those being vetted or prepared, or who sees them before they come before us?
Okay, Dr. Townsend Smith.
So, leadership within the agency sees them for an overview, and then I give the final overview before posting them for the board for its approval.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Now we'll turn to the Business Operations Committee. Is Mr. Alcorn or Mr. Chastain on the phone? Okay, hearing that they're not, the only business before this committee was an update on contracts, and so does anybody have any questions about the contracts? If so, we have staff here that can address your concerns or questions.
Mr. Chair, I just have one quick, I have one quick comment or request.
Yes.
And that is that perhaps going forward, if we could have, as part of this information, any contracts that are either single sourced or no bid.
Okay, that's a good suggestion, Mr. McDevitt. So we'll note that, and that'll be pointed out in the future. Okay.
Thank you.
Now I recognize Dr. Olivia Oxendine for the Educator Standards and Practices Committee. Dr. Oxendine.
Thank you, Chairman Kobe, and good morning to my colleagues on the board. Under ES&P, this month we have two action items, ES&P 2, which is SBE policy amendment to LICN, which is our critical source of information and guidance around the licensing of educators in North Carolina. We also have a second item, ES&P 3, the EPP application for initial authorization by Teachers of Tomorrow.
Mark Johnson.
Has left the conference.
That process, application process, began several months ago. I'm very happy to say that it is coming to us for approval today. I will go back to ES&P 2 and I'll call on Dr. Tomberlin to come forward and apprise us of any changes, updates to LICN 001 since last month's meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. Good morning, Chairman Kobe and members of the board. We have had a few changes to LICN 001 since we brought it for discussion last month that we wanted to apprise the board of. And those changes can be found. There are two major changes that I want to discuss with the board this morning. The first can be found on page 18 under section 1.90, the permit to teach policy. So we have received reports from the field that there are a substantial number of teachers, especially elementary teachers, who have been teaching for the past 2 years,
A participant has joined the conference.
who have been successfully teaching for the last 2 years, but have been unable to pass their licensure exam by the end of their second year. And so there have been many requests from the field for the board to address this issue in some way. And the way we're recommending the board address this is to allow these teachers who fail to meet their licensure requirements and whose license will expire June 30th, 2018, to be issued an emergency or a permit to teach for the 18-19 school year. This permit would only be good for 1 year and would allow these teachers to hopefully pass any licensure requirements that are outstanding, and then return to a initially licensed teacher license.
Are there any questions from my colleagues on the board about that?
Well,
Did I interrupt you, Dr. Tomberlin? I think I did.
No, I paused to allow any reaction to that.
well, I'm pleased to see that we have the authority to do this because it's a big problem. So is the extension for 1 year to wait on the legislature to deal with it?
My understanding in discussions with Dr. Oxendine and State Board Office is that we will work on addressing the licensure policy as a whole over this coming school year to work out these issues that have arisen. I want to make it clear to the board members that the recommendation for this permit to teach must come from the LEA, and they must deem those teachers as effective. They get to decide what effective means, but so the LEA is on the hook for approving these teachers to move forward on this permit, and it is only good for 1 year.
Okay.
Are there other questions about? This is a very important revision that has been made since we met last month. Pepsi was a part of the discussion.
This is Treasurer Dale Falwell. Sorry I was late calling in.
Has joined the conference.
Treasurer Falwell, do you have a question about this item?
No, ma'am. I'm just checking in for the roll call.
Okay. Well, to a point, well, thank you very much. To a point that Dr. Tomberlin made just a few minutes ago about what is going to happen going forward. One of the things that I feel that we need to do with regard to this Pearson test that our teachers, primarily our elementary education teachers must take, we need to take a serious look at the alignment with the items on one of the subtests. It may be mathematics, I'm not sure. I kind of think it is. We need to take a close look, an analysis, an alignment analysis between the test and the actual preparation of our candidates and the daily instructional expectations of teachers. I sense there is a pretty dramatic misalignment, and we won't know that until we conduct the study. So under the direction of Dr. Petrie Martin, Dr. Tomberlin, Dr. Seiberg, and others within the agency, perhaps the mathematics department or division can be a part of that, as well as there's a role for Pepsi. We're going to do a serious study on alignment, and perhaps that will begin to get us on track with this issue.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Lisa Godwin. I just wanted to echo what you said. You're exactly right. From being on the ground and interacting with beginning teachers and teacher prep students, they are, having this issue with the math portion. So I appreciate your diligence of wanting to do an alignment. I think that is necessary and is needed. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Godwin, for weighing in, and I hope that you will have the time to play a role in that analysis, because it's beginning to be long overdue that we have this alignment study.
Yes, ma'am. I'll do whatever you need me to.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tomberlin, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. There is one other change to the policy from when we presented in June that we wanted to make the board aware of, and that is on page 5. And this is related to the issue that we're discussing today. One of the challenges for the department is we do not have good data on teachers who are in jeopardy of not meeting their licensure requirements. And that is due to the fact that teachers teaching candidates can attempt the test without reporting those scores to North Carolina. And so in an effort to kind of get a handle on how many teachers are in jeopardy, and so that we can be proactive about this, we made a policy, we're recommending a policy revision that in order for a test to be considered for teacher licensure in North Carolina, those scores must be reported to the state through the vendor. And that way we can track teachers that have yet to attempt the test and or pass the tests, and hopefully be proactive and supportive in their efforts to obtain licensure.
Very good. That is an important revision, so that DPI becomes a recipient of scores, and we will, even though I believe there is a member of Pepsi who did an informal survey that certainly laid the groundwork, provided the information that has got us to this point of making this change in the policy. But we do need we need to be the kind of the warehouse of all important data from testing that leads us to making policy decisions around licensure. So thank you for doing that. Other questions regarding ES&P 2? If there are none, I would like to move that the policy amendments presented by Dr. Tomberlin to LICN 001 be approved by the board.
Okay, motion by Dr. Oxendine. Is there a second?
Second, White.
A second by Mrs. White. I now turn to Dr. Townsend Smith to call the roll.
Chairman Kobe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
State Treasurer Falwell,
Go ahead.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
And Falwell's a yes.
I was going to ask you to go. Okay, motion stands approved. Dr. Oxendine.
Yes, moving right along to ES&P 3. This is the EPP application for initial authorization, Teachers of Tomorrow, and I will again turn to Dr. Tomberlin to begin this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. I'm actually going to turn this over to Dr. Syberg to take any questions that board members might have on this application.
Very well.
So this is Andrew. This was brought up last month. This is the second of entities that are interested in providing beginning teacher preparation in North Carolina. This, just as a quick review, this application has been peer reviewed by 3 folks in the field that have extensive experience in national accreditation review process, and their recommendation to the board was that this entity be approved as an EPP provider for North Carolina.
Thank you very much. Questions from my colleagues? just to make note of the fact that the Teachers of Tomorrow followed all the guidelines established by the State Board of Education that is part of TCED 004. One of your items regarding this item gives a very good overview of Teachers for Tomorrow, their status in seeking CAPE recognition, some of the studies that have been done by one of our universities, Duke University, I think the University of Texas, and maybe one other study. So the document that's provided by Teachers for Tomorrow is pretty impressive, and I trust that board members, you've taken the time to go through that. What I really liked is the fact that the organization has established 3 MOUs with 3 of our LEAs in North Carolina. I believe that's Harnett, it's Rowan Salisbury, and the public schools of Robinson County. So it sounds like they're ready to begin preparing teachers in North Carolina. Are there other questions or comments around ES&P 3? If there are none, I move that the EPP application submitted by Teachers of Tomorrow be approved by the board.
Motion by Dr. Oxendine, second by?
White, second.
Okay, Ms. White seconds the motion. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Kobe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
State Treasurer Falwell,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor, Dr. Oxendine.
Yes. Taylor, yes. Taylor, yes. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, motion stands approved. So Dr. Oxendine, I thank you. Do you have any further comments before we
I
move
certainly
on?
don't, and that concludes my report for July.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I recognize Ms. Amy White for the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee. Ms. White.
Good morning, everyone. To my friends and colleagues and those who might be listening in this morning, I'm Amy White, and I am the chair, along with Mr. Wayne McDevitt, for the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee. We've got 3 items to discuss this morning. The first is EICS 1. This is the final ready to open recommendation for charter schools for this fall, the fall of 2018. As you know, according to 115C-2185 and CHCR 013, the state board grants approval to applicants for charters contingent upon the completion of our planning year program. So I'm just going to back you up to May and remind you that 14 schools came before the board in May for approval. Since May, we had Anson Charter to request a 1-year delay. On June the 11th, 8 of the 13 schools had to submit additional information to CSAB. Then on June the 11th, Apprentice Academy requested a 1-year delay because of low enrollment. And so today, the CSAB is making the recommendation, along with the charter school division, that we have 12 schools who are ready to open. I'd like to make a note that the Global Achievement School had a stipulation added that they must meet 100 students, and as of June the 25th, they had 93, and the CSAB went ahead and allowed them to move forward. I've got Dave Machado that's going to answer any questions that the board might have. Ms. White, this is Ms. Taylor. Yes, Ms. Taylor. Yeah, I would like to ask a little bit about the one that did not meet the stipulation but that's going through. Is there a change on their enrollment as of today, or are they still at 93? And did they resubmit a new budget based on the lower numbers? Because, again, I just think we have to be very careful that we're not setting a school up, for failure. And I did listen to the interviews on this one back from, I guess it was a month ago.
So if Mr. Machado could update me on that one.
Yes, Ms. White, this is Dave Machado. The last figure we got from Global Achievers in Nash County, they were at 104, 105. We did ask for a revised budget. Have not received it yet, but we did talk about what their break-even point is, and they have not hired all their staff at this point. So we are confident that they will have a revised budget for 105 students. They have asked for this is a year-round calendar school, and they're going to delay their open for 2 weeks to get possibly even some more students. But we're confident that their budget will reflect a break-even point.
Okay, and then for all the other schools that had areas that were not satisfactory a month ago, have all of those been met, dealing with governance and all of the other issues? There were 2 or 3 schools that had multiple ones.
Has joined the conference.
I'm sorry, Ms. Taylor, I didn't hear the last of that question.
Okay, I was just wondering if all of those schools that had, 3 or 4 different areas that were of concern, have they, remedied them? Are they all good to go with, governance and enrollment and nutrition plans, EC? Because there were several that showed up a month ago.
Yes, they have. When they came before CSAB last month, they were able to answer the questions, and the EC department was there to verify that the schools with the EC issues, that was corrected. Some of them had some facility issues that were able to become overcome. So, yes, ma'am, they have been met to the satisfaction of CSAB.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from my colleagues?
I have a comment or a question after we approve. It's related, but it's not about the specific one of these.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McDevitt. So, hearing no other discussion. Hearing no other discussion, I will move that the State Board of Education approve the recommendations for charter schools opening in 2018.
A motion by Ms. White, second by
McDevitt.
Olivia.
Go ahead.
motion, second by Mr. McDevitt. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Kobe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
State Treasurer Falwell,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Motion stands approved. Ms. White, will you please continue?
Okay, before we...
Ms. White, I
Oh,
have
yes, a question.
regarding.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. McDevitt.
Sorry, no, that's okay. I just wanted to ask Dave, what is our number of approved charter schools and now after this?
In August, we will have 185.
185.
With this 12 you just approved, yes, sir.
Okay, and we raised the cap several years back, and do we not have this exact same number of staff now that we had when we raised the cap?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to point out that this continues to be a very labor-intensive process, and we now have 85 more, and we have a number in the queue, and we have a lot of different issues within each of these, and I just don't think we can continue to operate that way and do the kind of monitoring and all that's expected of us. So 85 more with no additional staff.
Mr. McDevitt, that's an excellent point. Is the superintendent on the call?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, and I'm not sure if you heard that last comment. We've got concern that we've got significant workload on our charter school department, and
maybe by the next meeting, could you update us on how we might direct alignment to give them as much support as we can under the current budget reductions that we face? Or do you have a comment?
No, we can look at that. We'll get your report next board meeting.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Mr. Machado, thanks so much for your hard work in getting these schools ready to open.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are we ready to move to EICS 2? All right. So this is going to be, I'm going to call Dr. Eric Hall to make the attempt. This is going to be the approval of the Innovative School District Beginning Teacher Support Program Plan. Dr. Hall is going to present this for our new ISD for the 2018-2019 school year at Southside Ashpole. And so this is going to outline requirements and the coordination of support for the beginning teachers during their first 3 years working as a new teacher. And this, of course, has to be in place because our ISD is functioning as a separate LEO. So, Dr. Hall?
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Ms. White, and good morning, Chairman Kobe and Superintendent Johnson, Vice Chairman Davis, and members of the board. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July holiday, and just again appreciate the opportunity to be before you today to talk about the ISD's Beginning Teacher Support Program plan. As Ms. White indicated, just like every other LEA in the state, we need to have a plan that helps to ensure the adequate support and preparation of our beginning teachers. And as we start this first year at Southside Ashpole, of course, we will have some beginning teachers that we need to make sure have a plan in place to support them in their early development, everything from supporting them towards their initial licensure process during the first 3 years. This plan helps to outline everything from an induction process, what we do with orientation, to even looking at how do we make sure that the operator, the principal, our team is there to support and ensure good, strong working conditions for the beginning teacher, limiting any additional duties that they might have, especially during that beginning phase, so that, again, we are supporting them in their development of the skills and strategies for being an effective teacher. Looking at how do we also assign and select a mentor to also support them during this phase. As you may recall, we do have a full-time instructional coach also at the school that will play an important role in that mentoring and development process. With that, going beyond the mentoring and looking at the professional development plan and ongoing professional development for the teacher. We also, you'll notice in this plan, a formal process for conducting observations and summative evaluations. We will use and follow, while we do have some of the flexibilities afforded charter schools, we're going to continue to use the NESIS process and looking at how do we support and evaluate our teachers. And part of this is making sure that we have good, strong continuity across our schools in alignment with every other school in the state, so that if we have a beginning teacher that wants to transfer at some point in time and take on an opportunity in another district, or vice versa, a beginning teacher coming to us from another district, making sure that we have that alignment and how do we transfer that information and continue to support them towards being able to be fully licensed after the initial 3 years. And so today's plan, again, it's a starting point. It's where we look at how do we support our beginning teachers. I would anticipate that this plan will continue to evolve and grow and be brought back before the board for additional amendments and refinements in the years to come. But this is our starting point and where we would like to present to the board today our beginning teacher support program plan for the ISD, particularly as we get started this year with our first set of team members at Southside Ashpole. And so I'll pause for any questions, comments, or any clarification that's needed.
Ms. White, I do have a question. Ms. Olivia. Yes. Thank you, Ms. White. Thank you, Dr. Hall. I have a couple of questions specifically about how this beginning teacher support program plan, given the low achievement that we all know about there at that particular school, how is this plan going to differ from let's say, the standard plan that the board has adopted for all beginning teachers? I mean, is it going to be more intense? I would hope so. Is it going to be more focused on formative assessment data collected by the teachers? Explain explain the difference in this plan compared to our state plan that we've adopted for beginning teachers in general?
Thank you, Dr. Oxenham, for that question. So one of the first things that I can tell you up front is that we are doing an additional 2 weeks of professional development before any other teachers, even in the local district, return. So we'll be starting on August 6th with the teachers and the staff at the school, which is going to take a deep dive into kind of that orientation process that's identified here in this plan. That's going to go, into the curriculum strategies, classroom management, into all the things that we know are going to be critically important to the new teachers, not only in this school, but to all teachers that are working in the school, because we understand that this is a strategy to help improve and accelerate outcomes for the students at Southside Ashpole. So that's one of the biggest differentiators, I think, is the additional 2 weeks of training in the first year for all teachers coming into this school. Beyond that, the instructional coach who will be facilitating with team lead, which will also, we would anticipate serving as mentors for beginning teachers, using the regular process of having weekly check-ins, using a professional learning community model, using ongoing data, both assessment data, but ongoing qualitative data, other things that will be looked at to help support beginning teachers in their early development of using data to inform instructional practices, which in turn the mentor and the instructional coaches can reinforce in supporting those new teachers in that development. So those are some of the things that I think are, where you get down from kind of this high-level plan that gives you an overview into the details of what it looks like to operationalize the steps of supports in the school.
So is the school taking part in the North Carolina check-in system?
So we will be using that. We actually will be using check-ins, but we'll also be using regular walkthrough processes that the ISD will be using as we go in and look at what's taking place in the school, looking at how do we monitor the contract with the operator who obviously employs the principal and supports the day-to-day operations of the school. But we will be using regular check-ins to make sure that we are monitoring the progress of the school, not just the entire school, but more specifically, you'll see in this plan we have an HR consultant that works with us now, who is the former HR director from Cumberland County Schools. She's a former principal. Very fortunate to have her on part-time with us to help support our HR needs at the ISD, and will play a critical role in helping us support the instructional coach and our staff that are at the school.
Ms. White, if you would allow me just another minute, I do have another question and a follow, and one definitely related, another somewhat related. Dr. Hall, have you hired all the teachers, and if you have, where are you in the hiring process, and how many of them are teachers from last year that you rehired from previous year, from last year, that is?
So right now we anticipate, and I just got a report of where we're at as of today. Once reference checks and everything are completed on the final candidates that we have in place right now, we will have 3 more vacancies to fill before the beginning of the school year. And I think we'll be well on track to have all those vacancies filled here over the next couple of weeks. Of the teachers that we have, we will have 6 beginning teachers out of the 17 instructional teaching positions that we have at the school. And, when you ask about the number of teachers that will be returning,
right.
we have about 3 teachers, total of 4. There's one that we anticipate returning. So 3 to 4 teachers total that will be returning for next school year. But one of the things I will point out is that this particular school did have several vacancies at the end of the year, and did have several substitutes that were being used on a fairly regular basis. So we knew that there were already some existing vacancies at the school that had to be filled.
Okay. All right. That's good. Well, here's my final thought on this, because it is called innovative. I trust that what happens in that school instructionally, professional development, teacher support will meet the definition of innovative, because that's what is so desperately needed at Southside Ashpole. Not the usual.
Completely agree, Dr. Oxenham. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's built into our schedule for this school is that each teacher will have 2 planning periods a day, 2 45-minute planning periods, so that we are building in time not only for the professional learning communities to meet and use ongoing data and support across their teams, but also making sure that teachers have adequate time to prepare and use the information that they have available to guide their instruction.
Very good. Thank you.
Good work. Dr. Hall, this is Lisa Godwin. I just wanted to ask, how many of the teachers that you have hired on staff have already completed like the mentor training and are ready to help these BTs begin the task of starting the school year?
That one, I will have to get you some detail around that one. I don't have that information in front of me right this minute. But in looking at the information that I do have in front of me, that the instructional coach would have that part completed, and that we have 2 others at this time on staff that appear to meet those requirements as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hall, question.
Yes, sir.
And this is a little bit of a follow-up to Olivia's comment on innovation. I think that comment is absolutely correct, and I heard you agree with that. My question or my comment is that as you go forward with this and other schools and all of this, I think identifying best practices that could be considered going to scale is real important. And so to the degree that you can help us identify those things, those practices that could go to scale, I think would be very helpful in the future, and not have to go back and reinvent that. And with that in mind, let me ask you this: this PD, back to the beginning teacher support program that's in front of us, is the source of that money that will provide that service, is that through the direct appropriation to the program?
As far as for the professional development?
Yeah, or yes, in other words, EISCS2 that's before us right now is regarding that plan, which I really like. Based on what I know, it looks thorough and it looks good. And as you said, it's the beginning, and will. But with that, what's the source of providing that?
Yes, sir. So a couple different places. So one of the first sources is through the contract, of course, with the operator that we would be asking and expecting of our contract with any operator to support and provide a lot of the professional development, particularly the curriculum and instructional components that we'll be looking at.
Right.
Of course, like any other school or school district in the state, we will be able to access things like Title II funds that we can direct towards additional ongoing PD. And the appropriation, for the ISD itself, the $400,000 that's appropriated for the recurring allocation, where PD is brought into that, of course, we will be supporting, everything that we can through the ISD office. But part of the strategy here is looking at how do you identify, these what I would say innovative operator models to look at how do we support PD through those partnerships and things. But I think going forward, we have to make sure that we tailor it based on what we know about the individual schools and what those gaps look like. Because in future situations, right now we know that the one current school, significant needs, significant, what I would say, instructional challenges just because of vacancies and things like that were long-term in the school here in the past couple of years. We have to be able to tailor that PD plan, I believe, to each individual school and what we know about the staff working in that school. But to your question, sir, I would say that just like any other school in the district, we will utilize the funds that are appropriated through ADM, through federal sources and things like that, like they would for any school, use that to help support the PD needs of the school that we would have in place.
I think that's well said. I think, though, identifying those best practices, lessons learned, then applying those to each individual school in a way that makes sense. But the logic behind what you've laid out is good, and I find myself saying, this is good, I'm delighted we're doing this, but I'm also saying, shouldn't the state of North Carolina be providing this to every school in the state at some level? And that's not for you to do.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, what an excellent discussion. Thank you to board members for participating and expressing interest. We have a vested interest in making sure that Southside Asheville is successful in its first year. Any additional questions or comments about this beginning teacher support program plan? Hearing none, Dr. Hall, I will just reemphasize that you heard from several of us that innovative is the key, but we want to commend you on the hard work that you've done and the due diligence that you've provided in leadership. I dare say that most schools have many more vacancies to fill before the start of the school year, so the fact that you're down to single digits is amazing. So today, board members, I'm going to make the recommendation that we move approval of the Innovative School District Beginning Teacher Support Program Plan. This is action on first read. Do I have a second?
Motion by Ms. White. Do we have a second?
I offer a second. Olivia Oxendine.
Okay, Dr. Oxendine seconds the motion. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Kobe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
State Treasurer Falwell, Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Back to State Treasurer Falwell.
Okay, motion stands approved. Ms. White.
Thank you. So we've got one last item under new business for discussion today. This is a update on legislation allowing a renewal school system. And so Session Law 2018-32, this was House Bill 986, allows for local board of education of a local school administrative unit that has the greatest percentage of restart model schools in the state that have been approved by the State Board of Education that receive low wealth supplemental funding. So we've got Dr. Deanna Townsend-Smith, who is going to give us an update on that legislation and in regard to Rowan Salisbury School District, who has submitted its request to become a renewal school system. That came to us on July the 3rd, 2018. So that's submitted as new business today. Dr. Deanna Townsend-Smith.
Thank you, Ms. White. Good morning, members of the board. As Ms. White stated, this came about from Session Law 2018-32, which allows for a school to request to be a renewal school system. Rowan Salisbury has submitted its plan, which the board must approve by August 2nd, 2018. The steps that we've taken internally include the plan being submitted to Educator Support Services, who will conduct its due diligence and will have additional information to report. There may be additional financial considerations that we may have to address at our next meeting. However, the legislation explicitly states that the board shall approve it if the school met specific criteria by August 2nd, 2018 for the 2018-19 school year. Are there any questions?
I do have a question with regard to, this is probably rather simple to deal with, but I wonder if the school improvement planning process will be dramatically different in light of declaring or approving this as a renewal school system. Would that process be more intense, more comprehensive, or will there be any major changes?
It should be more comprehensive. From the quick review of the materials that were submitted, it seems to indicate such, but we will have a more detailed report for you at your August meeting to detail any of that information.
All right, thank you.
Any other additional questions? So this item will be back to us next month with additional information, and it should be on the action agenda. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the report of the Education, Innovation, and Charter School Committee.
Thank you, Ms. White. We now move to the Student Learning and Achievement Committee, and I recognize the chair of that committee, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman Kobe. This is Becky Taylor, and along with Dr. Olivia Oxendine, we do chair the Student Learning and Achievement Committee. We have two discussion items before us today. The first one, SLA 1 policies delineating the components of the READY accountability model. And as you know, the state accountability model is used to meet the ESSA plan requirements. And of course, it's used to calculate school performance grades in which schools earn A through F grades based on proficiency measures and student growth targets. Dr. Tammy Howard's going to present some of the revisions to these policies in order for us to meet state and federal requirements. Dr. Howard?
Thank you and good morning. So I would like to draw your attention to a PowerPoint that is in the attachments. This discussion is centered around 3 policies that have proposed changes so that they will be in alignment with the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was approved June 5th by the U.S. Department of Education, and also with state statute regarding the A through F accountability system. So the first one that we're going to look at this morning is Accountability 020. And this policy has historically stated the indicators included in the accountability model. And what we are proposing here to do is, in the first part of this policy, to cite the business rules for the indicators for the accountability model. These business rules many of them are already on our website in the accountability section, and we will be adding more to that. Ultimately, eventually, we will come back to the board and combine all of these into one document, but for now, they are separate independent documents. The bottom of the first page of the policy has a chart, and you can see here the components of the accountability model, and then we're indicating for those components whether or not those apply to performance measures, which is also achievement, growth, participation, or long-term goals. And then, just to clean up this policy more, we are recommending that we remove all historical references previously. The practice has been to come back annually to the board with this policy, and upon reflection, we think that we will do that if there are changes, but if there are not any changes, then it was really unnecessary to revisit this every school year. So those are the recommendations for 020. The recommendations for 021 is to revise this policy so it focuses on participation. Much of what has been deleted in this policy is covered now in ACCT-020. So we're trying to make sure that we are not duplicative with this information, but to center this on the participation requirements, particularly with those respect to English learners and with students with disabilities. Of course, English learners, the first year they're in a U.S. school, they take the test, but they do not count for growth or for accountability. The second year, they count for growth, and then the third year, they're in the accountability model entirely. And then, of course, with students with disabilities, that particular requirement, of course, students participate in the general assessment either with or without accommodations. And then there are some students, because of their eligibility criteria, they participate in what we refer to as the alternate assessment. And this policy goes through and affirms all of that, in addition to stating one of the requirements of Every Student Succeeds Act, which is, with respect to participation, if a school has 100 students, and they test 92 students instead of the required 95 students, then the denominator used in their calculation for their achievement measure is actually 95 and not 92. And this is a shift. This is required by the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it is stated in this policy as well. And then the last one is Accountability 038. And this policy, of course, the board spent some time discussing this in the spring. The changes here are mostly technical, with the exception of, you'll notice that of the 4 options that have been possible for alternative schools and other special schools to avail themselves in the state accountability model, option B is being removed or recommended to be removed. And that is because option B is actually that those schools can send all of their